Okay.
Perfect. There we go. Hello. Sometimes
Hi.
second to like load on YouTube. Let me make sure. Yeah. Okay. No, it's good.
Excellent.
I'm so excited to talk to you guys. I already know what you guys thought of the book, but we'll talk about it. Go ahead, Spencer. You could start us off, introduce yourself, and just maybe say what you rated the book.
Oh, okay. Yes. Hi, guys. I'm Spencer from Intentionally Bookish. Super excited. And I have some thoughts because I go back and forth on what I rated the book. But for right now, I'm going to say that I gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay. But my mind might be swayed depending on like where this conversation goes.
Okay, cool. Desiree?
Okay, hi, my name is Desiree from Genki Reader on Instagram. My second account is Genki Musings, and then my YouTube is Desiree Alicia. I should have it consolidated, but it's not. I rated the book a 2.5.
Oh no!
I'm probably going to be leaning a little bit more towards that. I'm feeling real generous in my rating right now, Desiree. So
I feel like it's me, not the book. I don't know. It's not bad.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, girl.
Well, I'm like the opposite. Okay, my name's Samantha from Bookclub Samantha, and I actually really liked the book. I feel like it was exactly what I expected, and I'm going to give it a 4-star rating. So I did enjoy it a lot. I was talking to Desiree as we were reading, and I knew she wasn't feeling it, but I was like, I don't know. It was something really nice about it. So for those of you hopping on, we read Flowers and Foul Play by Amanda Flower. It's the first book in her Magic Garden Mystery series.
I'm so glad you have a physical copy because I don't have anything to hold up because I listen to the audiobook.
You listen to the audiobook. Desiree, you listen to the audiobook as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that might have been a mistake for me.
Maybe. See, okay, someone rated it a 4-star. I'm not the only one.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching and read it, let us know, like out of 5 stars, what you rated it, so we can kind of get a gist of what everybody thought about it. But Desiree, that's why I was like, I'm gonna rate it a 3, but my mind might be changed. I feel like I'm exactly what you said, which is it's me. Like, I don't know what's going on with my mental state, but when I read it, I probably, like, if I read this 6 months ago or 6 months from now, I very well could have rated it something totally different and most likely higher. So I don't know. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So Courtny was going to join us, by the way, but she's not feeling well. But I did see her rating on Goodreads, and she gave it a 4-star as well too. Okay. So a lot of 4 stars.
Yeah.
Right, there's 1 3 in the chat.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I see 3. Yeah, so looks like it's hovering around a 3 or 4. Though I will say, okay, so quick caveat when it comes to cozy mysteries, because I read a lot, and if any of you also read a lot of cozy mysteries, you know that for the most part they can be formulaic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But for me, my cozy rating is different than a lot of my other book ratings. And if I give something, like I almost have 2 different kind of 3 stars. So like if I rate a cozy a 3 and like have positive things to say about it, it's not a bad 3. But then on the other hand, I can also have something where I'm like, that's kind of mediocre. So 3s for me for cozies aren't necessarily bad. I think it's just because like I blow through so many of them that I'm just like, this is enjoyable for the time. But if you ask me the character's name or like anything beyond a general plot, I'm not going to remember. So
yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. When I rate something a 3-star, it's not inherently bad, and it basically means like nothing was problematic about the book. It just wasn't like an all-time favorite. I'm gonna remember this forever type of book. Yeah. And then for me, like a 4-star, I really enjoyed the book, but it wasn't something that like made me cry or made me like sit at the edge of my seat. So it wasn't quite that like perfect 5-star. So that's how I gave my 4-star reading. But Desiree, why was it a 2-star for you? I'm so curious.
I didn't like the heroine or the hero, like at all.
Who do you consider the hero?
The police officer,
the chief inspector.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just labeling him as that because he was like the most prominent male character. But like, I didn't enjoy either of their characters, and I think for me and cozies, and I do like the ones that I've read, I think there's this I don't want to say it's a formula, but there's like a certain archetype of heroine that is easy for me to dislike, and she kind of fell underneath that. I don't know how to explain it other than that. Like she's not my favorite. I read another series, not to like sidetrack the whole conversation, but it was one about the vampires and the knitting, and I really liked the series. Once again, the writing was great, the story was great. I hated the heroine. I hated her so much. She was terrible.
If I don't like the character, I can't even get on board with the book. Like, it's so hard for me.
I was so upset because there was like 11 books in the series, and like the stories were so good, but I hated her. Like, she was so judgmental of all the vampires in the story, and I'm like, we're on book 3, and you still think the vampires are dangerous, and they're literally your family. I don't understand. So it was kind of like that type of. I had the same feeling with this book for the heroine. So it's really it's me. It's not the book.
So okay, side note, I don't think we even talked about the synopsis. Okay, so in this book, our heroine, she is engaged to get married to like a country music star, which like they briefly saw in the beginning and then never touched on.
I missed that.
Yeah, I was like,
no, I didn't. I remembered and I forgot.
It was a blip. It was really.
And I was like, okay. So, anyways, he ends up leaving her for their cake decorator as they're planning their wedding, and then her flower shop that she owns goes out of business. So she ends up getting a call from an attorney and finding out that her godfather, who lives in Scotland, passed away and left her everything, like all of his property, all of his inheritance. But the main priority is this magical garden that she kind of grew up in. So then she comes to Scotland, and as soon as she gets to Scotland, there's a murder, and her godfather's attorney is dead in the garden, and she has to find out who it is.
Yes, and I will say, just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, the prime suspect is the groundskeeper. And so the kind of whole impetus for our main character to even get involved, other than the fact that it happened on the grounds, is because she wants to prove that the groundskeeper is innocent, which that's one of the things I found problematic. We can get into that now. We can get into that later.
Go ahead.
So to me, that was, and again, with Cozy Mysteries, I'm just going to act like everybody who's joining this knows all about them, because why else are you here? So as we all know, the very first book of the series in any Cozy series is usually very trope heavy, just in terms of like needing a reason for the character, the amateur sleuth, to even investigate. And so oftentimes that means that like they're blamed for the crime, and so they need to clear their own name, or somebody close to them, like a family member, more often than not. And the thing that I found really problematic about this from the jump was the heroine's motivation to find the groundskeeper innocent, when she, to my recollection, barely knows him. Like, granted, he had been working as a groundskeeper for her godfather for years, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she was close to him. And I wish I would have like bookmarked this when I was listening to it, but I didn't. But there was a line in the book, like pretty beyond the halfway point, but she literally says that she doesn't necessarily trust the groundskeeper. And to me, I'm like, why would you be so intent on proving his innocence if you don't trust him? And like, I think I was running my ideas like past my husband as I was listening to this book, and I think I would have enjoyed it better if they made it so much simpler and somehow made it to where the godfather wasn't dead and she just had to prove his innocence, because at least that was her family member. But it got a little bit, to me, convoluted, that they made it the godfather was dead, but his murder wasn't the main murder, and instead it was like the groundskeeper who was anyway. So to me, that whole rationale to kickstart the story got a little bit rocky, and I think that's one of the things that I put into the negative column as to why I rated it. And because I was such a big plot point of the story, I had problems letting that part go.
Yeah, because, okay, so there was a point where the chief inspector was saying, like, Hamish, the groundskeeper, was the main suspect because he had the only key to the garden, which is where the body was found. So that's, like, a logical way of thinking. And the heroine literally is like, well, my godfather trusted him, so he's automatically, like, resolved of anything that could have possibly happened. And I think the chief inspector was like, yeah, that's not, like, a reasonable way to, like, absolve someone of a murder case, but sure, like, if you think he's a good person, that's fine. So yeah, she didn't have much connection to the groundskeeper other than her godfather trusting him. And it's like, yeah, I didn't know. It was a little sketchy. Okay, so who did you guys think did it before the end of the book, which we might do spoilers towards the end, but who did you guys think was, like, the culprit?
I thought it was so I'm not really good either, because what I always do is I'm like, he did it, nope, she did it, like I change them all the time. The one that I had, like, the most, like, hook onto that I was thinking it was the hold on, I took notes and I wrote down the name, was Raj, who was the laundry shop owner, laundromat owner, only because I liked him and his wife. I like their character the most out of the book. The wife, Presha, who owned the tea shop. I like them both, and I feel like they were disconnected, like just far out enough of the inner circle to be considered suspects, to where maybe we don't see them again, like just enough internal. I'm not really articulating it right, but I thought it was him because I liked him. And I'm like, anybody who I usually like, that's how they kind of get you. Yeah. Somebody who was, I think, likable ended up being, I won't say who just yet, but I wasn't totally far off. It was a likable character, sort of.
Okay, I'm reading the comments and I'm so glad that people felt the same way. I 100% thought it was Callie. Like, from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah.
She was the first character we were introduced to besides, like, the pub owner and, like, all of that. But she was like the first person who just seemed sketch. Like, she had enough motive. Like, you know, attorneys are, like, power hungry, and she's not from the town. And, like, she was very hesitant to talk about the lawyer. So yeah, I thought it was the partner too. I thought
she was too obvious.
Oh, you thought?
Yeah, Desiree.
Yeah, because she was so, like, erratic and so close to him. I was like, this is too obvious. If this is the person, then this book wasn't set up very well. Because, I just thought she was too obvious. So for me, I think I also thought it was Raj in the beginning, just because there were so many things tallied against him. Yeah. So, and she was building up her case. It has to be him because he hated Alistair the most, other than the groundskeeper.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was at one point the groundkeeper's nephew, because again, since I was listening to the audiobook, I wasn't really paying attention to how much longer I had left. And so by the time I thought it was him, I thought the book was ending. It wasn't. So I'm like, okay, by the time she kind of put the pieces together and figured out that he wasn't really going to med school and all of that, I'm like, oh, well, maybe that's it. And we're kind of figuring out why. But obviously that wasn't the case either.
Yeah. Okay, so I do see some people asking, this is the first book pick. So our book club is called Teacups Murder. It's a cozy mystery book club, and it's seasonal. So we'll only be picking books per season. So this was our spring book pick, which is the first one we started with. And then we'll do a summer, fall, winter, and we'll announce all of them on our Instagram. Because I don't think, did we pick our summer book already? I can't remember.
Not yet.
No, okay. Yeah, so if you guys have any recommendations, let us know what you would want for the summer.
Yep. And for those tuning in who haven't read this book, it is the first in the series. I will say, I mean, we haven't really figured out what books we're going to read next, but each book that we pick, it's not necessarily going to be the first in the series. But I feel like with cozies, you can kind of just jump in wherever. So, you know, this one just happened to be the first one, which kind of leads me to a question that I had. And you guys, Sam, Desiree, let me know what you think. And then everybody put in the comments. Would you read the rest of the series after having read this book?
I would, yes. Desiree said no.
Desiree, would you feel differently if you read it and could because I feel like the audio was very influential because she had an accent and
I liked that though. That she had the accent.
I hated it.
I don't. The thing about accents to me, every once in a while she did dip out of her Tennessee accent, and then it kind of like repressed to like a Valley Girl sort of accent, and then she switched over to the Scottish, and then because she was going in and out, it kind of fluctuated a lot. But I did like the accent. It was by far the best Tennessee accent I've heard in an audiobook, who's also doing like a Scottish or European accent at the same time. So I thought it was a good audiobook.
Is Amanda Flower American? Is she American?
Let's go to Google. I don't know.
Because I felt like she was overly obsessed with the accents in this book. Like the amount of times it was mentioned that our heroine had a Tennessee accent and like brown hair was ridiculous. Like every single person that she spoke to was like, "Oh, you're American. Oh, you're from the country. Oh, you're not Scottish." I'm like, what? Like I feel like Amanda Flower is American because she honed in on the accent part like way too much. Oh, she's from
Ohio. So I think here's my thing with people from different parts of the United States. I feel like even within the United States, we're kind of obsessed with accents just in general. So I think she was like really obsessed with the fact that her character was from.
And I think that's what bothered me. It just was too much for me. And I think if I had the opportunity to read it, I could play it myself in my head, but it was so heavy. And I've lived in Atlanta for like 20 years. And so I'm used to hearing this different kind of Southern drawl. And this just seemed, it was probably me because I suppose it really did set the story and it was very realistic and it kind of lent to her character. But for me, it just felt just much like very like, hey, y'all, I can't even do it.
It was a very twangy Tennessee accent.
Yeah.
It was not light at all. There's this TV show that I watched with my parents, and I feel like this is, like I said, Americans really do this to each other. It's these girls who are from New York, and they're flipping a house, that's the word, in the South. And they're just like, what do people in the South do? Do they do this? Oh, they love tea. Oh, they love oyster bakes. Oh, they love this. And I was just like, oh my God, you're American. I don't, people from the South love this and this and that. It was every single episode. And they're still doing it because the series is not over. So I think it was pretty accurate since she's from Ohio. I think it's
so that was the only thing that annoyed me is every single time she met a new character, whether they were like relevant to the story or not, they commented on her accent. I was like, I understand this is a small town, but there is no way you guys have not encountered some type of tourists. Like, absolutely not. That is just like, it's very obvious that she was not from Scotland. And I just felt like it was mentioned so many times that she was from Tennessee. And I was like, I get it. It's fine. Yeah.
When I was abroad, nobody asked me where I was from. At least, I mean, the places I've been, it was obvious that I was foreign because I went to Asia. But like, nobody asked me like, "Where are you from?" Blah blah blah. Accent this, accent that. So I feel like it was much. It was very much.
Yes. But I think the reason I would read it again is it gave me very Secret Garden vibes. Okay. Like the magical elements of like the leaves changing and there being like this big iron gates and like the squirrel and the fox. Like it gave me very much Secret Garden vibes that I would particularly read it because of that. I liked the magical fantasy element to it. And I think it's because when it comes to cozy mysteries, most of the cozy mysteries that I've read have been like baking cozy mysteries or book-ish cozy mysteries.
Like
realistic, exactly. I haven't read any that have like almost a magical realism vibe to them, so I really enjoyed that aspect of it.
Oh, Sam, you should definitely you should check it. We'll talk, but the Wishcraft series I think you'd really like. It's like a fun,
I have them because of you. I have them because of you.
Okay, you gotta read those. But I totally get what you mean about Secret Garden. And I was thinking about that too when I was trying to figure out how to describe the book. I would give this another try and read it physically rather than listening, just because I want more of the garden. I feel like we just scratched the surface of that. To be honest, I could take or leave the Ireland aspect. Like, it's always cool to be in a different country, but I like the garden aspect more just because I like magical realism, and then I also like botanical themes. And so because it was the first book, we got just a glimpse of what it could be. And I imagined, you know, as she kind of goes into her powers more, we'll get more of that. But I actually, because I had to like figure out I like to figure out how to pitch a book if I'm trying to like describe it to somebody. And I described this one as like Poison Ivy meets Teen Witch. Like, she's coming into her powers, but she's got, and the powers that she has is like dealing with, my husband actually said, I don't remember the character's name. Is it Maribel? The girl from Encanto who like changes the flowers or whatever. Yeah, he was, when I was describing the book to him, he was like, oh, so she's like Maribel or whatever. Which I think is a really cool aspect that I would like to see more of. I don't know if I would listen to the audiobook, but I like the garden aspect a lot. Totally.
Yeah.
So is it official that she's a witch, or is like she's just connected to the garden? That's the only part I didn't I understand.
I think she's connected to the garden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so let me ask you guys then, because I was a little confused about the rules of everything. She's connected to the garden, and so obviously her godfather was too, and his whole lineage, blah, blah, blah. But like, why is there a groundskeeper? Like, wouldn't they be in charge of taking care of it and pruning and using whatever powers they have to grow as they like? What's the grounds person there for? You know,
that is true. I mean, the Godfather. Okay, yes, that comment, I agree. Yes. We'll talk about that in a second. I think because he traveled so much, maybe like he was just like the physical upkeep of like the animals and the actual like property. Yeah. Oh, I 100% thought that she was going to be his daughter.
Yeah, some kind of deep secret. When we finally learned what was in the letter, we finally got to see what the letter was. And I'm like, okay, exposition. But I was expecting some deeper dramatic secret, like being the daughter,
because they mentioned several times that the property had stayed within the family for like eons and eons, and like someone even said like, oh, you're not going to last long because only people from that family live there. And I was like, oh, she's definitely his daughter, but his best friend raised her because he was always traveling. No, that never happened.
And Lisa, I'm going to put a comment up. She brought up a great point. They never really just like really connected the dots as to why it was her on like kind of in charge or the next predecessor of the garden, because I feel like if it's lineage, it technically should have died with him because he didn't have any children. And if it's just a matter of like, okay, my goddaughter, you know, who I barely see just because I've said her name and bequeathed it to her, it's now going to continue with her.
Yeah, I agree. And also, she did have like this power. Like, wouldn't it have part of it showed up when she had her like flower shop? Like, it was only with this garden. You know what I mean? So it was like,
And that, to me, that's kind of what the teen witch part to me was. Like, it was triggered at some point. You know, maybe when the godfather died, it's now like the magic is in the air to go into it. I have no idea. I'm clearly speculating.
It had to be. It had to be. Because then even when she was a child, you know, playing in the garden, you think something would have happened, like a flower would have or something weird would have happened. But no, it was literally just in that moment as an adult when she went back.
Yeah, and she never, that's a great point, because she never even said like, oh, like she could have had a memory flashback of being in the garden as a little girl and something happened with a rose. And then it's like, oh, I forgot it. And 20 years later, the memory just popped back up. And, you know, her flower shop could have been thriving for some reason because she always had a green thumb. And they never even talked about, I mean, they gloss over so quickly just her shop closing because they just really needed a reason for her to just abandon everything in America. But they never even talked about her success or how long she tried to make the flower shop work. Because I feel like if you had some kind of predilection to botany, you know, maybe it, I don't know. Yeah, it just, the reason why she fled, and I know usually with cozies they always make that part super fast just so we can kind of dive into them being new in a different town, but she really, I feel like she gave up her life in America pretty quickly. Like, it's not as if she didn't have family, and she seemed very close to her sister, and she was just ready to be like, I don't know if I'm coming back. Bye, girl. Just send me the letter, text it to me.
Yeah. And her mom and dad too are still alive, and she was super close with them. And then most of the time in these type of books when they move, it's more of like a drastic reason. I mean, I guess her fiance leaving her was kind of drastic, but someone did mention that they felt like this was a good first book in the series. And I wanted to touch on that because, like, when I read cozy mysteries, it is very rare. And this is why I'm still open to reading the rest of the series. It's very rare that the first book is my favorite. I almost always like the second or third or fourth book. Yeah. Like, I feel like cozies tend to get better, if that makes sense. I don't know if author's writing gets better or I'm just like more involved into the characters, but it's very rare that the first book in a series is like my favorite.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
The ground for like the world. It's almost like fantasy, but not, where you have to lay like the grounds rules for all of the what's going on in their world, and then you get to the other stuff. I mean, like any series, but I think especially in this case, it's necessary. So first books that have to lay down groundwork usually aren't that great. But I already don't like the characters, which is why I don't like
them. Yeah, it's funny because I'm one of those people where if I am starting a cozy, for some reason, I just like have to read the first book, even though you're absolutely right, Samantha. It's usually the other ones that are better. And thinking about it, the books, the cozy series that have been my favorites, I think I've gone back and read the first one. So I've kind of like jumped in, and maybe it's because their author has kind of gotten the groove of the world and like what the characters' intentions are. So it doesn't feel so clunky. And then by that time you're invested in them and you're like, okay, let's see their origin story. And you kind of grade it a little bit lighter than just coming in totally blind and clearly asking all these questions, which, you know, eventually might get answered.
Yeah. I agree. And I think like a lot of people are reading this from a romance perspective, because I saw some people. I feel like Desiree was reading it as a romance reader because she kept talking about the chief inspector, and I was like,
but she kept talking about him in the book.
Well, like cozy mysteries very rarely have like a hardcore romance in them.
Yeah,
it's literally not my fault. She kept talking about him.
So do you guys, and this might open up a whole different can of worms, so hopefully I'm not like straying us too far off, but do you prefer, I don't even want to say like, but do you prefer romance in your cozies?
No, I don't feel like it's necessary in my cozy mysteries. Like, I can think of a lot that don't have. For me, I would rather them have like a quirky best friend than a romance. I don't know why.
I agree. I think it's because it seems, to me, it seems either shoehorned or it distracts from their sleuthing or some way, or this book is a perfect example. If the love interest happens to be like a police chief or of some sort, I just find it unrealistic how the police chief will just like forgive them for doing stupid meddlesome stuff just because they're into one another. Like, no, I'm gonna arrest you if you interfere, you know. But it's like, oh, it's cute, haha, don't let me see you around here anymore, or let me share information because, you know, we're close.
Yeah, and I think with cozy mysteries, I mean, you're never going to get any level of steam in cozy mysteries. Cozy mysteries are very wholesome. So if there is a romance, it's going to be like, I don't want to say watered down, but it is going to be watered down. Like, if I am looking for like a romantic relationship, I will just pick up a romance. I feel like I personally pick up cozy mysteries for a whole different vibe. So, I mean, there are some cozy mysteries that have relationships in them, like the Bake Shop Mystery Series. Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know. I'm more into like the mystery aspect of it.
Every cozy I've read though has like I haven't like gone deep into many of the series of the ones that I've started. All of them have sort of set up the possibility of them having a partner. There's always a guy that's introduced that like she automatically has this thought of, well, he's not that handsome, but if he did this, that, and this, then he would be like the perfect guy for me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, so this is obviously the person that something might happen with. So I don't know if I could say that I necessarily prefer or not, because I haven't read one where there wasn't someone who was set up to be a potential partner. And I haven't gotten to one where they like anything has happened either. So I wouldn't really know how that will work out in cozies. But yeah, I'm always thinking about it from a romance reader perspective, and I can't help it.
No, I don't blame you, especially if the ones that you've read, because there are quite a few that do have. Statistically, I'm not surprised that you've only had some that have relationships, but like Samantha was saying, I also prefer the ones where there's like a quirky best friend or like a sassy grandma or aunt. Like those are my jam more so than the romance, because those type of sidekicks tend to kind of help the character, and they kind of get into more trouble together, very Thelma and Louise, and I find that more entertaining than again this potential love interest that I'm like, okay, you're thinking about him and you should instead be thinking about the case, because that's what I'm along for the ride for.
Okay. An established relationship, that sounds cool. Like if there were like a married couple or something, that would be interesting. If that's what that person meant as an established relationship.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if I've read that before. I'm drawing a blank.
Established relationship. I read one. Now the name is escaping me. It's a home, like renovation one, and she can like talk to ghosts, and she like is okay. So it's not an established relationship, but the character in that story is like an ex-boyfriend of hers. Like they were together, so like a second chance romance. So they did have already like an established chemistry with one another. That's the only time I've seen it. Or like Big Shot Mystery series, like technically Carlos is an established relationship.
Yeah, you're right. I've read, there are some that are out there. Like one of my favorite cozy series that I talk about all the time, the Donna Andrews, Meg Langzo series. She actually meets her husband in the first book. He has nothing to do with any of the cases. I think she just meets him, and eventually they get married, and he just is there. I think the reason that I don't mind that one is because he's more of a partner than a husband. Like there's not really any lovey-dovey type, and it's weird because you see them courting in the books, but it's not cringy whatsoever. It's literally just like they hit it off almost as friends and just develop this relationship. So I think, it's a fine line, because I do like more so that friendship aspect, just because I'm going into it trying to solve a case, not, see who they're going to end up with.
Yeah, I'm the same way. But I could definitely see why, especially in this one, they did have like an enemies to lovers vibe going on. But yeah, I normally don't really care for romance in my cozy mysteries, which is so odd because I predominantly read romances.
Well, that's because if you wanted a romance, you would pick up all those other romances.
I know, yeah. So I'm like, no, but the cozy mystery, I'm looking for like a whole different vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of the romances and the sort of love interest, what did we think of the chief? Because we already know that I don't like him, but the reason I didn't like him is that when they first came on to the scene or whatever, there was a scene in the book where he's asking for her credentials and whatnot, and she's refusing to give him X, Y, and Z. I think what it wasn't about the passport. That was actually pretty standard, but there was a scene after that. I'm blanking on it. I just had it in my mind. It really bothered me.
It was asking why she decided to stay in Scotland. He wanted to know why her and her fiance broke up, which was like the weirdest thing.
Yeah. So I think that one, I was like, I don't think she actually has to answer you, and she could get a lawyer if she wanted in this point in time. He should have stated her rights before he like pushed her towards doing that. So that was one of the things that really bothered me in that moment. I'm like, this people end up in jail because of moments like this, and they didn't even do it.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
you definitely have to suspend disbelief for that line of questioning, because and this is one of my bookish pet peeves, because I interject my own personality into it, but that part about the passport, you're not getting my passport. Like as I was listening to that part, I'm like, ooh, girl, don't do that. Like, go into discussion with him. There's no way in hell I'm giving you and they weren't even in an official building, to where he's like, hey, come with me to the police station, we'll answer some questions, blah, blah, blah. And then he asks her then. But they're standing in the middle of the garden. She hasn't even had time to like unpack. And he's like, hey, give me your passport. No.
You're in a foreign country. Like, your passport is literally the only thing that identifies you and could get you back home. Yeah. So that's not something I would willingly give up either.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then the only thing I did find unrealistic, I mean, it's a magical garden, but for that I can suspend my disbelief. But the only thing I found unrealistic about the chief inspector is his intense connection to like every single murder suspect. I was like, I understand it's a small town, but if you have any connection to the person that's being murdered, like, you would not be a part of that investigation. Like, they would bring in somebody else, and I'm sure there had to be someone else. So that was the only unrealistic thing, was how, like, because he grew up there, he knew all of them on a personal level. Like, he wouldn't have been in charge of that case.
Well, see, and to your point, I think, and what you're saying is exactly right, but I was thinking of it from a different point of view, and that is to say, if this town was that small and he had connections and knew everybody, I feel like he should have been a little bit more hesitant to be like, yes, the groundskeeper did it. Like, I feel like he should have given him not the benefit of the doubt, but just a little bit more hesitant. Just like, oh my goodness, I can't believe, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but I'm sorry, Willie, I'm gonna have to bring you in, just some kind of, not necessarily remorse, but like, you clearly grew up with this guy, because they had the whole story about when he was a kid, and it seemed as if he was close to everyone else except for the groundskeeper in terms of giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there was some bad blood there or something, because the groundskeeper said he wasn't welcome on the land. So I don't remember.
Well, the groundskeeper didn't like him because of okay, so the book wasn't as bad as I'm having all of these issues with, but there were some problematic moments, and that's one of them, because the groundskeeper seemed very hung up on some foolish childhood prank or whatever stuff kids get up to that the chief inspector did, and that to me seemed very unrealistic, because for the groundskeeper to have been in that town for so long, he knows how all of the people there who were young probably were up to no good and mischief, and it's not as if the guy did. When we finally learned what he did, to me it wasn't nearly as egregious as why he had been holding this grudge this whole time.
Yeah, so. And I'm like, okay, so if you lived in this town, you grew up in this town, and there's stories of a magical freaking garden, like, I'm sure there would have been dares to like get into the garden, or like wanting to know more information, just as like mischievous children. Like, it's a freaking magic garden.
Yeah, and that was interesting to me, that I wasn't really expecting everybody to kind of know about the garden, and I mean that, and to me that, I guess that would be a reason why I would want to continue the series, but everybody acted so nonchalant about it except for the priest, and while he was supposed to be painted as the bad guy, I was kind of feeling he was the more realistic one, to where he's like, hello, this woman is up to no good because she's part of this magical garden, but everybody else is like, oh yeah, oh, the magical garden, oh yeah, whatever. And to me that was a little bit bizarre.
Yeah, I do feel like there's some missing pieces, because in the beginning it almost made it seem like the garden was in some way related to the town, like it was supposed to like benefit the town, like the magic made the town also magical, or like had some type of healing properties, but then that was never really described.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, basically they were given this piece of land from like nature, after surviving the shipwreck. And that was supposed to like benefit the whole town. But the garden itself, like, did it have any other purpose than just being connected to the keeper? Like, did it have any other healing purpose?
In the first book, I don't think so. I think it was just he owned it, or it was generational land. But for some reason, the tea shop owner, Precious, she seemed, obviously she knew, and she seemed, not only did she know, but it seemed as if she was invested, and I don't know why. Like, that's why I thought that maybe the garden provided something to the town, like you were saying, Samantha, because other than just her knowing, it's, you know, it's just like, well, what else is there about it? You know, if it's just a magic garden, cool, but it was kind of hyped up to be more.
Yeah, and then like someone made a comment in the pub, I don't remember who it was, maybe it was Lee, I don't know. And then someone was saying like, oh, he should have used that garden to like help the town instead of traveling so much. So I was like, is this garden like healing or something? Yeah. But then I don't know. It was never ever garden, I was like, maybe I'm reading too much into it.
Also with the garden, I felt like reviews about what the garden was and what it meant to the village and how people perceived it, reviews seemed mixed. Some people thought that they were like a really cool family and that held them in high esteem, and then other people really didn't like them, and like the disconnect between those two was never really explained. Like, are we in two different camps about the family? I wasn't really sure. I thought it would be like they were entirely village outcasts, but they weren't, because people were treating Ian as like a village hero, or maybe a country hero, whatever, for Queen and Country. So I wasn't sure what the overall like thought was on this family in the garden, and I never even considered what the garden actually meant, because I was still hung up on what people thought about the garden.
Yeah,
it's true.
So speaking of like magical aspects, let's talk a little bit about the animals. So we have the fox, then we have the cat, which wasn't necessarily magical, but it was introduced, so I feel like that's going to be a thing. And then the squirrel, and that freaking squirrel. Okay, so
the star of the show.
That's how I know it was me having the problems when listening to this book, because I feel as if she said the word chittered like 8,000 times. And I just couldn't help but notice it. And I know that's what squirrels do, and it's accurate, but it just seemed really redundant. And I thought it was fun, but I think, I don't know. You guys let me know your thoughts about the different animal aspects and kind of what you thought about them.
I love the squirrel. I thought he was so mischievous. And from the very beginning, when he took the key, I was like, I like this little squirrel dude. I don't know why.
I was waiting for one of them to talk, or understood language in like a definitive way, but that never really happened. It was kind of just like all up to her imagination, and she was putting words into their mouth. I was just waiting for something definitive to tell that they understood her.
I loved, and I'm not going to give spoilers, but to me, there was a definitive moment at the very end, the last line, and that really, really made me like the book, was the last part with was it a fox?
The fox.
Yeah. The fox. And to me, that was kind of like, okay, like a little, but the part, so with the squirrel, I mean, just like my own hangups aside, the thing that I was wondering was, surely that was not the only squirrel in all of the land where they were. So like, how did they know which, like, was that the only squirrel allowed in the garden? Like, how many were there? I got hung up on the wrong thing, because like, it could have been any number. Like, I guess I just wanted a scene where she was in the garden by herself, and then there were like 4 squirrels, and she's like, which one of you is like, I don't know. It just,
I really thought, yeah, I did think the animals were going to start talking. I really did. Because in the beginning, it almost seemed like the groundskeeper was talking to the squirrel.
Yeah.
Like you were having a conversation.
Right.
And like, I mean, what type of squirrel would be smart enough to like take the key and then give it back and then go to the garden? I don't know. So I really thought that he was going to talk, but no, it did not.
Yeah.
Are squirrels in Ireland red or something? Because in my mind, squirrels are all brown. So they kept talking about his red fur. So is he a special squirrel, or are squirrels in
That's
Ireland?
a great question. So not all squirrels are the same color. I don't know what the ones in Scotland are like. And again, that's one of the reasons why I'm like, does this squirrel look different? Like, is it a red squirrel amongst brown squirrels? I'm just hung up on, because where I live, you can walk outside and there's like 20 squirrels during the fall. So
Yeah.
It's like, how do you know which one is the one that you should be focusing on? Because I feel like a fox, since they tend to travel more solo, that's easier to see as like, okay, you're the fox. And clearly the cat that she brought over. But a squirrel just seems so general that I just I wanted more just so that we knew. I don't know.
I like this comment that someone said, I feel like the squirrel is Ian's dad. Okay, this is going to be a spoiler, so sorry. But the fox is Ian, her godfather. There was some connection there. Yeah. So because you're tied to the garden, maybe there is like a reincarnation aspect. Like the animals are connected to the people. I don't know. Maybe. That would be interesting.
So then would the squirrel be, Ian's dad? And so, okay, if that's the case, what do we think about the cat? Because I feel like that was shoehorned in. Like she said she didn't want the cat, but then she ended up taking the cat and then insisted that she's only hanging on to it until she finds it a better home. But I'm like, girl, that's your cat. Like, you're not gonna give the cat away. So now it's like, is the cat going to be a cat amongst other intelligent animals? I don't know. There's a lot of animals.
Yeah, that's true. I don't really think too much about the cat, honestly, to be honest. But really?
Yeah. I was like, that's your cat the moment the cat sauntered out and like sat on her lap or near her.
She talked about the cat a lot for the cat not to be a thing. And this is going to probably put me on people's like no friend list, but I don't love cats and cozies. And I know that's a huge theme. But when the cat was introduced, I'm like, oh, here we go, because I felt like it was just going to go a different direction. So I would be interested to see if the cat is just, that was never a thing, or if somehow like the cat found its way to her because it too was somehow incorporated into something. Clearly, I could be reading way into this. Yeah.
Because it traveled from the house when there was a gas leak. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
There's only 3 books in this series.
Oh,
this is a small series. Normally,
obligated to.
Normally, Cozy's is like 30 books.
Yeah,
right.
I just wanted to see
red squirrel, and it's orange. It looks like it. It looks like it has Cheeto dust all over it. Okay.
I just wanted to see what the second book was about. It looks like her sister moves in with her the second book.
What? Okay, that sounds like a bad idea.
I don't mind that, because I felt like one of the most realistic parts of the story was when she was having the conversation with her sister, and the sister was like, I didn't get anything. How come you got an entire estate and all of his stuff? I got nothing. And I'm like, okay, so I'm an only child. I feel as if I should say that. But I did talk to my husband, who has lots of cousins and siblings. And it seems very like, I don't want to say selfish. That's not the word. But not right if the godfather if she was his only goddaughter, it's weird that you would only bestow your attention on one child and not the other one, even if for some reason you are technically only her godfather. It just seems weird. Like if there's multiple children, like there's multiple children. And so I kind of felt when she was just like, well, why didn't I get anything? And she said it kind of in like a bratty way, at least in the audiobook. Yeah. But I did think that part was realistic. Like she was supposed to be bratty, but I'm like, yeah, you bring up a good point.
No, that is true, because if our character spent like summers with her godfather, so did the sister. The whole family was there. That was her dad's best friend. So yeah. I didn't even think
like supposedly balling, and he gave her like this huge inheritance, and he couldn't share that with the sister.
Yeah. The land was big enough to share. Yeah, so no, the sister moves in with the second book, and the cat definitely must be a thing, because the squirrel's in the front of the first book, but the next two books, the cat is like front and center.
Right there. Cat's a thing. Cat's a thing. So now it's like, well, who's the cat?
I feel bad though, because the person who dies, I mean, that's not a spoiler, it'll happen in the beginning of the book, but in the second book, I think the person who dies is that volunteer police chief.
Oh no! You know what? That makes sense though, because they have to make it someone who is you don't have that big of a connection to.
Yeah, and I mean, he does seem like he would be more trouble than help. So
yeah. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
Huh. Well, I mean, that automatically explains or is an example as to why the subsequent books and cozies are more interesting, because clearly we already know him as a character. So I'm a little bit invested because I'm like, ooh, well, none of these people liked you. So who could it be, rather than just trying to find out posthumously, you know, what everyone's motivation was for this, the lawyer.
Yeah. I thought that police volunteer guy was funny. I don't know.
Me too.
I didn't hate him.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes in cozies there's always the one person who is supposed to be kind of like the pain in the butt, and he's never, or they are never murdered, because they're supposed to be like the foil to our main character. I thought that could be his role. And you know, sometimes you find that person annoying, sometimes you find them entertaining. I don't think that he really like stirred up enough. Well, I mean, I guess that's why she decided to kill him off.
That's funny.
He barely did anything. Like he showed up, then he got scared of the situation and he left.
That's why it's so funny. He's like, I am here to protect and serve. Wait, it's dangerous. The boss is dangerous. I'll be waiting over here.
My health insurance doesn't cover this, guys. I'll wait outside.
He was hilarious. Okay, I'm definitely going to read the second book, only because I do have the whole series. For some reason, I thought it was longer, but it's only 3 books.
Huh. Well, let us know.
I will say, if the second one takes place during the summer, we won't pick that as the next read. So
no, we're not going to pick another Amanda Flower book. If you guys have any recommendations on what we should read, you can message us on Instagram, or you can put it in the comments right now. But yeah, we have not picked our summer book yet.
Y'all should read the vampire knitting series that I read, just so I can see if I'm validated in my opinion.
Because you don't like the heroine? Oh my goodness.
Then we're not gonna like the heroine. What was the name? Who wrote it?
Oh, wait, I forgot the title. It's in my Kindle. Let me look it up real quick.
Because I think it's on KU.
The Vampire Knitting Club by Nancy Warren.
Maybe for our fall kids, like in October, vampire.
Yeah, I think she does show up around October when she goes to London, so that would be a good seasonal for that one.
Does it take place in London, or it just so happens just one book?
It's in England. There? I don't remember if it's actually London, but it's in England.
Oh, okay.
Isabella Allen, I've never read any of her books.
No, I know Amanda Flowers has multiple series under her Flower pen name, but I've never heard of Isabella.
You know which one I want to read, but I think you've already read, Spencer. Hold on, let me grab it. Ugh, my cozies are like right behind me, so hopefully this one.
Props if you can find it, and then wow, awesome. You definitely have a visual memory, because I would feel like I don't know where it is.
No, I knew my cozies are literally right behind me. Okay, you guys know I love Ellie Alexander, and she wrote under a different pen name. It was Kate Dyer Seeley. Have you read this one?
I have that book. I didn't finish it, so I'm down to read it again, because it's got everything. I love camping and outdoor stuff, and I bought it 2 summers ago or something to read during the summer, and I started it, and I don't know what happened, but I didn't end up finishing. So I'm down to read that.
Yeah, so this one's called Scene of the Climb, and she's like a rock climber, and it's in relation to the Big Shot Mystery Series because there's like a rock climbing store in that town. I think it takes place. Yeah.
Because I remember. Well, I don't remember that much, but I didn't really get far enough. I just know that it was kind of outdoorsy because she had to, I think, fake being more outdoorsy than she actually was. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Yes. Okay, she's trying to write for this Northwest Extreme magazine. So she's pretending that she's like a rock climbing expert. That's what she's not. She's not. No, she's not.
That's funny.
And it does take place in Portland.
Yeah. So if I hadn't known that it was a cozy, the way that you described it sounds like it's a setup of a rom-com. Like the way that it's like pretending to be something you're not. There's probably a love interest. Like that sounds very rom-com, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So this might be a contender because it's been on my TBR for a while.
And I own it. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Might be a contender.
All right, cool, guys. We're heading up on an hour. Thank you guys for joining us. This was so fun.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk maybe about what you're reading right now? It doesn't have to be a cozy. Like, what are you guys reading right now?
Wait, let me look at. I never know unless I look at my thing.
Wow, brain fart. So obviously, I'm reading one of the J.D. Robs, book 532 in the index series. No one is surprised about that. However, hold on, because I do have this one here. I also was reading Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey, which is a romance. And interestingly enough, I did not read the first book. I didn't want to read it, only because everybody kept comparing it to Schitt's Creek. And
oh, really?
I don't really like that show. Sorry, unpopular opinion. So is it Schitt's Creek? Yeah. Anyway, but this one sounded good, and I know romances can kind of be read not in order or anything. So those are the two books that I'm reading. I was actually going to pick up another cozy after this, but I hadn't really figured out what vibe I'm going with. So TBD. And I'm also open to suggestions.
So I'm in the middle of a few things. I am reading a Nora book. So what is the book called? The Brazen Virtue movie came out on Netflix, but I haven't read the books yet. So I started reading Sacred Sins, which is the first in the duet. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty good. It reminds me of the In-Depth series, except for she's a psychologist who's trying to analyze the guy.
Send me that book title.
Yes, I'll send it to you afterwards. And I'm also in the middle of two Jen Masterson books. So that's the Omegaverse guy that Sam recommended to me. So waiting on the one which is 700 pages, and I don't think I'm gonna make it.
Oh my gosh.
There's zero conflict. There's no conflict in it whatsoever. I don't think I'll make it. And I need to finish Snuggle Season by Amy Bellows. It's another Omegaverse with, I think they're fox shifters, and it's purely fluff. It's so cute. I enjoy it. I don't know why I haven't finished it yet. It's so cute. They're just burrowing in like a cabin, and like they're trying to mate, but like for fox shifters in this universe, they have to burrow together so they can slowly bond, and it's adorable. I love it. So that's what I'm in the middle of.
What I do in the winter.
I am reading another cozy because I'm in that vibe. I need to read the last two cozies of the Big Shot Mystery Series by L.A. Alexander, and then I'm finally done. I have been savoring this series like so slowly because it is just.
I stopped reading.
It's my favorite, and she doesn't write fast enough for me, so I'm like savoring it.
I slowed down.
Yeah, and then I'm also reading this novella by Jessica Kane, which is like a total different vibe.
Yes, which one? Because she has
I don't
so
remember what it's called, but it's the one where like she's pregnant on the cover. Like she owns this big factory, and like she's basically trying to convince one of her workers to like get her pregnant so she can have a baby. Yeah, I think it's called A Baby for the Boss. I think that's what it's called.
Awesome. Jessica Kane is such a vibe, and I give her so many props. I watched your video like a week ago, Samantha, but she does, I mean, that's a whole different combo, but she does such a wide variety of stuff.
Yeah.
So she's exactly, I've read her before when I need to get out of reading slumps. And I will say, yes, I'm listening to a JD Robb, but like I have had a hell of a reading slump. So when I say that I'm reading something, this could take me like 8 months to read. Who knows, guys?
I think I read maybe 3 books this month, and 2 of them were my book club picks. This pick and then my historical romance pick.
Yeah.
So I was like, I have read nothing. Like the worst reading slump ever.
Yeah. I'm just like, I just have to say, guys, I'm so proud of myself for finishing this book club pick. Not because the book wasn't good, but just my mind, it's just, as soon as I knew I had to read a book, it just shut down. And I'm like, no, but I want to read this. And my brain's like, no, girl, we can't do that.
It's a mental thing, because it starts to become like, it's like required reading in high school. Like when you're forced to read something that inherently is not fun.
Yes.
And that's what it is with book club picks. I'm like, but I have to read it. Even though like I picked the book, I have to read it.
That's why I don't do so ironic that me too. And that's so ironic why I finally like starting a book club, because I've been very anti, like I just know me. I just can't, which I feel is why we also made it seasonal, because 4 books a year is so much more realistic. And like, I want to thank you guys all for joining and reading book club picks, because I know for me how difficult it is. I could want to read a book so bad, but if tomorrow you were like, hey, that book is this month's book pick, I'm automatically not going to want to read it anymore. Like, I don't know what it is. Even if I have 3 months to read it. So thank you guys for still sticking through and reading the book, especially if you didn't end up rating it, more than 4 or 5 stars, because I know how easy it is for me to DNF a book. So if you guys read it and you're like on the fence about it, but still powered through just to join this chat, like power to you.
Exactly. And like we announced this like a month ago. I read this book yesterday. I had a month to read this book, and I did it the night before. It was like midnight, and I was
but that's okay, because I listened to the audio, which wasn't long. Like I think the audiobook was maybe 5 hours.
9.
Did you say 5? 9? Okay. Yeah. It took me a month to listen to that. So, take it with a grain of salt.
I'll do you one better, Samantha. I was still listening to it when I logged on to this chat.
Oh my God. I was literally in the gas line at Sam's Club, and I was reading this book as I was reading.
Glad to know I'm not the only one. So, guys, if you did the same thing, like you're amongst good company, because clearly we procrastinate in a wide variety of ways.
I told you, you're inviting on, you're inviting chaos, because every single time I'm on one of these live shows, this last possible second, I will be reading this book.
Yes.
So bad.
So our next book pick is in the summer, and you will have plenty of time to read it, but all of us will read it last minute.
The day before.
Because that's just how we are. That's fine.
It better have an audio, otherwise it's not getting read.
Oh, yeah. So I'm glad that you said that, because I did want to say, because somebody had messaged us way in the beginning when we first announced it, the books that we will pick will have audiobook options, just so that everybody can have accessibility. If you want to read it with your eyes, read it with your ears, you have your option of doing so.
We don't want to make it too difficult. This was an Audible original, I think
was it?
Yeah,
I bought it off of Audible, but that's only because it wasn't on Scribd or anywhere else. I usually
Audible original, which is why we couldn't find it on Scribd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I hate Audible originals. They're nowhere else. Amazon has some of the books that you need.
So next time we will have it where it's like on Scribd, or hopefully your library. A beginner recommendation, The Bake Shop Mystery Series from Alexander.
Totally, 100,000% recommend that one. Yeah, I won't even give another option because I feel like that's like perfection. See,
it is
and I need that
I
from
feel like it's where we all start. It's like a gold standard for cozy mysteries.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of the rare cozies where the first one really is done well, where you don't have to feel like you trudge through it just to get to the rest of the books. The first one is excellent. And I can vouch for the audiobooks too, which are available. I don't know all, but they are available on Scribd.
They are.
Also, obviously, Audible, and they are excellently narrated. So,
well, they switched the narrator, like book 5. They switched the narrator.
Okay, except for that, because I
hate it
the hell out of me. And I'm like, when I listened to the book right after the switch, I listened for like an hour, and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, something sounds weird. And I had to go back and realize that it was 2 different narrators, which is a total pet peeve of mine. But I love the series so much, I'm like, forgiven.
The new narrator was fine, but I loved the first narrator. That when they switched, I was so bothered.
I was devastated. Yeah, I agree. I was like, do I want to now start reading it physically? Because I don't know. And they even switched the mom a little bit, I feel like, which also threw me off. And I'm like, okay, well, good thing I'm already just attached to the series, because that's the only way it would get me through.
All right, we derailed. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us. It was so fun. We will announce whatever book we end up picking on our Instagrams.
Yes, thank you guys, and have a good evening, and we'll catch up next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.